Are you ready for some monstering in the haunted graveyard? Good. Here we go. In this episode, we're going to take a look at the Palmer monsters from 1964. They are 8 figures, 3 inches tall, of monsters made by Palmer Plastics and sold in '64. And we're going to take a look at these guys now. Here is the Palmer Frankenstein, or Frankenstein's monster for purists. Let's block off all that eye candy in the background there. Take a look at the sculpt. Looks a lot like the model for, Big Frankie by Aurora. These are crudely sculpted, but for people that grew up in the '60s or that just like the look of these things, that's their charm. The crude, simplistic sculpts. Make sure you get one with neck bolts. Sometimes those are torn off from kids with excessive play. Here's the Dracula. Not a bad bailiff for such a simplistic little toy. Now these are all ones from my childhood except for this green wolf man. And yeah, he's kind of hunched over, but he's not a hunchback. He's a Palmer wolf man. I don't remember where I got this one. Probably from an eBay lot. As you guys well know, on eBay you run into lots with all kind of weird stuff that people don't really know what they are, and you end up with a lot of extra junk. This is the Gorgo in the desirable blue color. Now, word on colors for these. There are 4 basic colors: yellow, red, green, and blue. The blue is much more scarce than the other 3, and green might be a little more scarce. It seems like the yellow is the most common, and red is right there, very common as well. Green is fairly common. The blue ones you don't see as much. And I'm not sure if that's because they came out later. In the '70s, somebody repopped these again. I don't know if it was Palmer or somebody else with different colors, and the blue might be, the common color from the '70s, which is much less common than the reds, yellows, and greens. Anyway, that's a pretty good Gorgo. I've always liked that one. And also in the '70s, you had a couple of really hard to find colors: Butterscotch and white. This is the creature from the Black Lagoon. Not bad for such a crude little sculpt in the desirable blue color. Yeah, I had a lot of Palmers when I was a kid. To scale, the Kong and the Gorgo go well with like Marx and NPC dinosaurs. The other 6 go well with having them slaughter your army men as they vainly try to fight back against these terrible monsters. This is It, the Terror from Beyond Space. It's a cool monster movie from the late '50s, I think '58. And, you know, this is a pretty good figure here. I like this a lot. You don't see many figures of it, the Terror from Beyond Space, so it's kind of an oddity. So anyway, in the 60s, they made these things. Somebody made a few of these things and sold them like in different packaging. Like I'm going to get into the packaging, but like with dart guns for target sets and things like that. So the white and the butterscotch are really hard to find these days. I've never seen any of them. They're at least scarce, if not maybe rare at this point. This is the Cyclops from Seventh Voyage of Sinbad. And that red does not show up well on the camera for detail, but see his feet. The Cyclops from Seventh Voyage did not have feet like that, but Palmer molded him, had sculpted him like that so he would stand. Because if they tried to put the hoofs on him that he was supposed to have, and I have this guy to show you, this X Plus Cyclops with proper feet, well sculpted. Did a video on these guys, check it out. X Plus Ray Harryhausen Film Library figures. So anyway, if they had put those hoofs on that little 3-inch monster, it would have never stood up. Probably. Unless they made him real big, and then it'd look about like the duck feet, probably. Here's the King Kong. I always liked this King Kong a lot. He's all hulked out, you know. And there's a reason he's got his hand up like that. That's the hand he holds Fay Ray in. Like I said, these are original from childhood except for that green wolf man. And I remember the little yellow Fay Ray that came with this, about an inch long. Her arms straight up in the air like she's screaming and having a fit. And anyway, she fit right in his hand there. He held on to her really well. When you bought these, the Fay Ray was attached to the King Kong, I think on this side by a couple of plastic pieces, like a plastic sprue. I think they're officially called trees, but us collectors got in the habit of calling them sprues at some point. And it stuck. So, you know, she was attached by plastic sprues, and you just broke her off and threw the little plastic sprues away and put Fay Ray in Kong's hand. Okay, now for all this stuff on the table here, those 8 figures are the only thing that's really Palmer. I'll explain to you the rest of this stuff, but first I want to show you some packaging. This is Kirk Hammett's book of his monster collection. He's got a swell pic in here of some of the packaging. Now that's the way the Palmers were sold new in 1964. See, it had that clear plastic, like kind of like a card, a blister card, but it had the 2 pieces of plastic stapled together, and then the header card was stapled to them. And here that says 98 cents, but I've seen some that said 59 cents. This might be a later one. And here is another version of it. That looks like it's on a card backing there. You got all 8 of them in the same package, and the Fay Ray was attached to the Kong by the little plastic sprues. And then these little dart gun sets, I think, are from the 70s there. There's the colors. There's the blue Dracula. And there, let me see, get this to focus. There's the Butterscotch King Kong. And then in the other package, there's a couple of blue ones. So evidently, they're uncommon compared to the original ones from the 60s, but the colors from the 70s, the common color from the 70s, which is uncommon these days, is blue. And then you had the butterscotch ones, and there were white ones as well. And there's other packaging for those. Oh yeah, by the way, he's also got a swell pic of the Haunted Hulk here. There's the box for it. And there's some NPC monsters there. There's the horoscope and Horror House target set and the carded weird monsters. I did a video on NPC monsters you might want to check out. It's on my channel page. I mean, you know, I've got like some playlist of monster toys and a playlist for NPC toys and different things. So there's a whole lot of monstering on that channel page, so check it out. And of course, I've got the loose Haunted Hulk here on the table that I had as a kid, the hull of it anyway. I had to buy the other pieces. And I went into all that on a video about the Haunted Hulk, so you can check that out too, made by NPC. And there's the swell box. That's so hard to find. Just finding a Haunted Hulk is hard enough, but the box is virtually impossible. Okay, now let's get into the rest of this stuff here on the table, and I'll explain to you why it's here. Here is a copy, you know, it's just a cheap copy that somebody ran off of the header card for the original packaging of the Palmer Monsters, one of the packages. And there was different packaging, like especially in the 70s, you had different versions of packaging, and a lot of them had the dart guns in there for made them into target sets and things like that. Just cheap toys back then, but now collectors kill for that stuff. Basically, the two NPC pieces on either side of that in the background are just eye candy. I just use them for framing pieces, mainly because they came out at the same time as the Palmers. Pretty sure my parents bought me this Haunted Hulk. This Hull and Monsters are all original. I had to buy these other pieces years ago on eBay. But I was gifted that in 1964. And it says on the sale 63, but I'm sure that the majority of them were sold in 64 and maybe a year or two after that. But that's a really tough toy to find. I mean, extremely scarce. You know, ones in nice shape these days are like $1,000 or more. And this particular one is just here because it looks cool, and it came out about the same time as the Palmers. Same thing for this Pop Top Horrors 2-pack from NPC. I did a video on NPC Pop Top Horrors, as well as another video on NPC Weird Monsters and all the related stuff that goes with those. So if you guys are into monsters, check them out. It's fun stuff. Now we're going to look at this. This is a bag of fun. Now it says Winneco because it's got Winneco dinosaurs in it, which are cheap curly tail knockoffs of NPC dinos. I'm going to do a video on Winneco. I've done a video on NPC dinosaurs and gone through all the details on that. But I have seen pictures of Palmers in this bag of fun packaging. There were 4 Palmers per bag of fun. And I don't remember, you know, what they sold for. I don't think they even had a price on them at the time. Depending, they probably came out in the 70s, I would guess. Might have been like, you know, 50 cents, maybe a little bit more for 4 of them at that point. And now let's look at these flats here. Now, a lot of you guys are watching this video that are into monster stuff, and you're thinking, oh, he's got the Palmer flats too. Nope. No, no, no. These are Best Plastics flats. These 7 here are the ones that they made. They came in these Horror Monsters grab bags that came out in the late 60s, possibly into the 70s. And it says Best Plastics Corporation, Brooklyn 20, New York. Best Plastics. That's how you got the flats back in the day. And I mean, is it possible that Best Plastics hired Palmer to make them? Yeah, anything's possible. But since the name of the company is Best Plastics, I would assume they made their own. Best Plastics made these flats, not Palmer. The reason they started being called Palmer is because people just didn't know decades ago when people started collecting this stuff. And they attributed these to Palmer because they're based on the Palmer sculpts. And I've got them laid out in front here to show that to you. Now, here is the Best Plastics Frankenstein alongside the Palmer Frankenstein. You see, I mean, it's based on that sculpt. The Best Plastics stuff came out in the late 60s. The Palmers had come out in 1964. So, you know, the guys that were planning that stuff probably said, hey, Gopher, go get me some toy monsters. We're going to make some even cheaper versions and stick in these little grab bags for a nickel. So, you know, the Gopher in the office went out and grabbed some Palmer monsters because they were the first things he got a hold of. If he'd have grabbed NPC monsters, these flats might look totally different. But anyway, here's the Dracula. And, you know, it's a dead ringer, albeit in a flat, cheap version of the Palmer Dracula. Same pose, same everything. Not Palmer, Best Plastics. Here is the Wolfman. Same deal. Weird looking Wolfman. Kind of a hunchback with great big arms. There's the Best Plastics knockoff of the Palmer Plastics Wolfman. Okay. Now here is the creature from the Black Lagoon. They didn't do Gorgo and It, the Terror from Beyond Space, and the Cyclops. I guess they figured those were too weird. They wanted recognizable monsters, even though kids would have recognized those back then for sure. But, you know, these are suits we're talking about, making decisions. Okay, here is the dead ringer for the Palmer Plastics creature from the Black Lagoon. Here's the flat on the left by Best Plastics. Next time somebody says they're Palmer, tell them, nope, I saw a video. The guy made a bit of sense there and said that they were made by Best Plastics, showed the packaging they came from and everything. So I'm pretty sure that Palmer did not make them. They just, collectors started calling them Palmer because these are cheap toys and a lot of information was lost down through the years. We're just trying to piece it back together at this point. Here is the Palmer King Kong and the Best Plastics King Kong. Now he's got his other hand up, but that's the difference, you know. I mean, it's other than that, you can tell it's based on the Palmer because of the way the face looks and he's bulky, kind of hulked up, you know. Now, here's some more proof. In the flats, the 2 cavemen were included with the monsters. These 7 figures make up the flats. Here's the guy with the rock over his head. Now, is that based on a Palmer sculpt? No, it's based on a Marx sculpt. Marx Cavemen. That came in Prehistoric Times playsets. Another Marx Dino playsets. Same sculpt. It's just the flat Best Plastics version is a cheap knockoff of the Marx. Show you that sculpt. See them? They did good work at Marx. And here is the Best Plastics knockoff. Okay. In a like vein, we have the Marx Cavemen walking with club and the best plastics guy with club. It's in the other hand, but much in the same way that King Kong had the opposite hand held up. It had to be based on this. I mean, it was the most common one in the marketplace back then, and even the MPC cavemen that came out a little later were based on the Marx. So even if they knocked off the MPC cavemen, they were really knocking off the Marx. So anyway, there you go. That's here's another idea. Now, the collectors started calling these flats made by Palmer, but I mean, what does that argument hold up? Because these two are based on Marx figures. Are you going to call them made by Marx? Now, true, they are crudely sculpted, and they look much closer to the crude sculpts of the Palmer monsters than they do the fine work of Marx, but still, it's just these best plastics flats are just based on other figures. Here again, Horror Monsters grab bag, Best Plastics Corporation. Here's a note too about these grab bags. When you see these listed for sale on eBay, the sellers always bend the top down and claim they're sealed. You see that right there? It says privilege to examine before purchasing. Hey, when these things were new, they were never sealed. Now, is it possible that somebody glued the top down, shut before the seller got a hold of it? Yeah, it's possible. But it seems like everyone you see, they do that because they don't want you to see what's inside of the bag. They don't want you to see what they've stuck in there. I mean, I would be suspicious of a Horror Monsters grab bag that was sold like that because they were never sealed in the first place. Privilege to examine before opening. New. All right. Well, oh yeah, I did a video on these Horror Monsters grab bags too. And you guys can check that out and enjoy the trip back in time and get some info and entertainment and such. Also, it includes the spooky surprise grab bag in that video. Check it out. Lots of monstering on my channel. I call it the Haunted Graveyard because the banner at the top of my channel page is a shot of my Haunted Graveyard custom playset that I made. So I just call my channel that. And I may expand on that idea at some point. But that is my coverage of the 8 Palmer Plastics monster figures from 1964. Hope you guys dug it. Check out my channel page for much more monstering and toy dinosaurs and comic books and monster magazines and everything fun. See ya.